Welcome traders to the Daily Breakdown. I hope you've had a great week in the market so far, but now it's time to see if there's going to be any opportunities today for us to get involved in trading positions. And let's start that off with EURUSD. Okay, so looking at EURUSD, starting off on the 1 hour time frame, what we can see is that price has been continuing to drop to the downside. Yesterday's price action showed us this change of character just in here, which turned out to be a redistribution because we swept above these highs, and then immediately we retraced all the way back down and created another chalk to the downside. Now after that chalk, we then had a pullback mitigated into the range, and then we had another breakdown. After this breakdown, we came up into the range, mitigated into the supply, and then again, we continued moving lower. So that is all great, but now we have to work out what's going to be happening next. Now, this doesn't count as a break of structure because there isn't really any inefficiency in here. All it really shows us is that we've had a sweep underneath this low point. So one option on the cards would be to see another redistribution. So for example, if we were to come up and we broke above this high in here, what we could then see is some kind of redistribution in price. It might come up, maybe tap into this extreme area of supply in here, for example. And if that happened, then we could potentially look for opportunities to trade something such as this. If, of course, there was the necessary liquidity being swept. And of course, the alternative would be for price action to just continue to move lower. If we had more of a stronger push to the downside, then maybe there would be a new trading opportunity to then trade lower. And of course, we are targeting down here, which can be seen as this major low point over here on the left-hand side. So that would be one of the major targets for us to then see maybe a price reversal. But in the meantime, these would be the options that I'm looking for. Of course, we can go up to here and we can activate the TradeDork SMC Indicator. If we do this, what we can then see is that price is showing us this zone up in this area in here. If I just remove these markings for a minute, what we can see is we've got the lower low and then the lower high being put in here, and then price is coming back down. It's not identified another break of structure just yet. That's absolutely fine. We're still focusing on this one just in here, and of course we are seeing this area of supply. Now that means that maybe this high may be weak, and we may actually see a larger redistribution, something like this, where we then may tap into these zones and then move lower. It's yet to be seen. But of course it is interesting just to keep an eye on, so we know what's actually happening. But of course, we might not come up this high because if you look over here on the grid, we're clearly bearish on all time frames, which means that there's no real indication that price needs to be pushing up that high. We can clearly just keep pushing lower right now and use this low point down here as kind of a magnet to draw price towards. And that brings us to the end of the analysis for this pair. And now let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so looking at pound USD now, what we can see on the 1 hour time frame is that, of course, we have been extremely bearish, constantly pushing down, mitigating into these ranges. I mean, now we are becoming quite corrective in price. There's less inefficiency, which means that there's obviously less real strong areas of interest for us to trade out of. Now you can see that we've had this kind of larger wick here in price, and we are starting to move a little bit higher. But right now, the overall idea would be to see price continue to push down, filling into this level in here, which is actually a fill of a daily inefficiency, which again, can be used as a magnet to draw price towards. But it's just a matter of figuring out where price is actually going to move from. Now, similar to EURUSD, we may see some kind of redistribution. There's this area of supply up here where we have the inefficiency, and we may see some kind of move like this, where we may come into these zones and test a potential entry, where we could then look to maybe sell short, or we might actually push even higher and then come up and fill these areas of inefficiency, or come up into these higher time frame ranges. Now that is obviously one of the options on the cards, and if I now delete this, and I activate the TradeDork indicator, we can have a look at what it's showing us. Now right now you can see that what we've got here is this break of structure just in here. We can see that we have these levels of supply a little bit higher up than our zone, but it is obviously still at these areas of inefficiency, which is great. Which means that if price does happen to get up to these areas, then we could look to enter positions out of these zones. Again, if we have a look at the multi-time frame grid, you can see it's clearly very, very bearish. So it won't take a lot for price to roll back over again and break back through and tap into this area of inefficiency, and that brings us to the end of the analysis for pound dollar. And now let's have a look at the next pair. Okay, so if we have a look now at USDJPY, starting off on the 1 hour time frame, what we can see is that price is still breaking up bullish. We've had multiple breaks of structure to the upside now, and the last time we came back down, we mitigated into this range, and then we started to move higher again. Now that is all great, and now you can see that we are trying to push back up to this high point, again where we may see another break of structure. If we do, we can just continue to trade this trend, looking for more areas of demand. If we do get those areas of demand, and we get the correct confirmation, then again, we could look for even more buying opportunities, continuing this move up, of course, with the idea being that we do have this overall larger, higher time frame area in here to target. Now, we might not get all the way up here in one go, and we may probably see some kind of reaccumulation before that, but that's absolutely fine. We just need to play the market based on what we see and not what we think, and we need to wait for the confirmation and then enter the market. Now, of course, if I was to delete this and we turned on the indicator, let's have a look at what it's currently showing us. Here, we can see that we do have this much larger area of interest in here. We had a change of character, price pushed up, created a higher high, higher low, and then another higher high. So we're now sat in here into this range, and now we're looking to target the high again, which is absolutely fine. You can see on the multi-time frame grid, we're still clearly bullish on all time frames, which is great. And now we just want to see if we continue these moves, pushing up higher, mitigating into ranges, and then continuing to push higher. That would be the overall plan for this pair. And now let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so looking at now US30, what we can see is that price has eventually come all the way down, and now it's come into this refined area of demand inside, obviously the much larger areas of high time frame demand. Now we need to be careful here because we have taken out this swing low, which is great, and we are seeing some kind of short-term rejection, but there isn't any real momentum yet coming into the market. So we just want to make sure that we're seeing the correct confirmations here, and we don't want to just be jumping into price because what could happen is, we could see these corrective moves, and then price could just completely fall back down and continue moving lower, which is obviously what we don't want. Now, the best place would be after a break of structure on here, so if we had some kind of 1 hour change of character up here, that would be a real true break of structure and show us the price is actually rejecting this area. Now, if we don't want to wait for that, what we could do is we could drop down to the 15-minute time frame now, and we could wait for this high point to break strongly, if we did get some kind of change of character on here. Then what we could wait for is something like this, and then we could look to potentially enter a trading position out of an area of demand, maybe something like in here. Then what you could do is either wait for much lower time frame confirmation, something like this, or you could just get involved as long as your stop was clearly out of the way. That could be definitely an option on the cards. But right now I can see the price is very corrective, which means that we aren't really impulsively moving out of this zone, so we just want to be a little bit cautious because what could happen is price could hold this area of supply, and then we could just simply see a move lower. So we need to be aware of that. Now, of course, if I turn on the indicator, let's have a little look at what it's showing us. So if I come up to here and activate this, what we can see, first of all, are multiple areas of supply on the 15-minute. If I bring this back up to the 1 hour now, and we wait for the indicator to appear, then what we will see is that if we delete these areas in here, we've had this break of structure. We've got these equal highs marked up in here, and we do have this area of supply at this extreme. So this has given us more areas of interest where we may see some kind of higher time frame supply reaction. Of course, all these time frames are bearish, so in order for us to trust that this area is going to hold and the price is going to move back higher, we do want to be seeing some of these time frames switch back bullish, and then we can look to potentially get involved in a trading position. That's what I'd be looking for on this pair, and now let's have a look at the next one. So now looking at gold, what I would be looking at first of all on the 1 hour time frame is the fact that we are clearly in this bearish trend, which is great. Now the main thing that I would be focusing on is this current range, and what I would do is I would draw in this area of supply like this, and what I would be looking for is price to come up into here, sweep some kind of session liquidity or some kind of liquidity that forms, and then look for some kind of trading opportunity like this and continue to trade this lower. Of course, we're looking for price to come all the way down to this level, around 1884 right now, and I would expect the trend to just continue. So this is what I would be looking for throughout today's price action. If we drop this down to a 15-minute time frame, we could just refine this down and tidy it up a little bit. We do have this area of interest as well. So I'm going to just mark this one in, and something like this would be a great area to look for trading opportunities. Of course, if I go back to the 1 hour time frame now, and we just delete this and we activate the indicator, so we come up to here, turn this one on, what can we actually see is price showing us. And if we just remove all of our drawings, we can see that we have this larger break of structure up in here, and then we haven't really had anything concrete form just yet. If we go down to the 15-minute time frame now, we may see something in a little bit more detail. So after this loads, here now you can see that we do have this break of structure in here, and it is now showing us these refined areas of supply, which we just spoke about. But of course, we had this mark then on a 1 hour time frame, but here you can clearly see it. You can see the price is starting to be quite consolidating in here. And it means that we may have a short-term pull-up, and then we may see some more moves lower. Of course, this multi-time frame grid is clearly bearish. So I want to just continue looking for short positions now and target those lows on the higher time frame. So that brings us to the end of the trading ideas for this pair. And now let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so looking at Bitcoin USD, now you can see that we haven't had much movement yet. I'm now on the 4 hour time frame, and you can see that we are clearly quite corrective right now. If I drop down to the 1 hour time frame, we can see more of this corrective price action. Not a lot have happened. Price just sort of came down, tested into these areas of demand, and then started to move away again. Now, of course, we have actually mitigated into this range, which, like I said, means that price could just now push down and continue to move lower. But if this is going to be used as liquidity, then what might happen is price may come up, it will sweep above this high, and then what we'll do is we'll mitigate into either this area of supply or maybe this area of supply, and then we may see a move lower. Of course, you have to be patient with Bitcoin because it can be quite corrective for longer periods of time before you then see more impulsive movements. So it's important just to wait for your key areas and then act on it and get involved in positions when we think momentum is going to be entering the market. Of course, if I just do this one in here and then we go up and turn this on, what can we actually see on this time frame? Well, if we go back up to the 4 hour time frame, what we can actually see now is that if I remove this drawing in here, and we remove this and this, we can see that we do have this change of character identified in here. And we still have this area of supply. We are currently reacting out of this demand zone in here, which is fine. And the overall idea on the multi-time frame grid is a clearly bearish idea across all time frames, which supports the fact that we want to see price move lower right now. So that brings us to the end of the analysis for this pair and the end of the analysis for the daily video. Hopefully, we're going to get some nice opportunities in the second half of this week. So remember to stay vigilant, stay prepared, and of course have a great day in the market.
Be a dork.